Hello guys, we all agree that perhaps the most important events of the Russian war in Ukraine take place on the front lines. Thank God, after 3.5 years of this war, the front lines are not only in Ukraine but also in Russia, extending approximately 1,200 kilometers. That is a lot. Today, we all listened very attentively to the press conference of the chief commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, General Syrskyi. And once again, there was a tremendous difference between the way Russian war criminals report and how openly, freely our general speaks with the journalists, covering complex questions, starting from what are the hottest parts of the front line, and the drone warfare, the future of the Russian war, the number of the Russian soldiers on the Ukrainian ground before they get in the ground. And in general, any sane person sees that Putin does not want peace and that the choice of this weak escalation management strategy was a total failure that actually led to more wars and conflicts appearing in very different corners of the world. And the reaction of the former Russian President Medvedev only supports that. Learning about the US strikes on Iran nuclear facilities, he promised that Iran will get back its nuclear weapons from other supporting countries. I think it's not difficult to guess. Perhaps he means this terrorist federation. So let's discuss these important updates from the Ukrainian front line, which is important not just for us, but as turned out for the world, because unpunished evil grows. And here in Ukraine, with General Syrskyi, President Zelensky, Budanov, Maluk, we are ready to do the job, to punish the evil and to teach other authoritarian regimes a lesson. They need that. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, I'm in Ukraine, and if you want to see the defeat and demilitarization of Russia, the only working peace plan, please subscribe. We discuss all of that on the channel. So let's start with perhaps the most important parts of the front line, and they are both in Russia and Ukraine. In general, according to General Syrskyi, the length of the front line is striking. It's more than 1,000 kilometers, actually 1,200 kilometers. All of these zones are hot, but some are particularly important for the Ukrainian defenders or for Russian invaders. Number one is Kursk, Sumy direction, and we returned back the control over Andriivka, so Russian counteroffensive failed. And I agree with the general that it is super important to preserve control over Kursk region, because right now more than 10,000 soldiers are fighting there, are trying to get back the territory, and they cannot be taken to some other parts of the front line. And the second hottest zone is Donetsk region, where they keep trying to get to these administrative borders of the Donetsk region. An important reminder, that is what they try to do since the very start of war, since 2014, not just 2022, and constantly fail. So despite the fact that Russia now has a lot of PR managers, even in the White House, it is not true that they are invincible or they can get all of Ukraine just as Putin claims he wants. They fail, and they fail tremendously with Ukrainian soldiers now in Kursk region and them unable to get Donetsk and Luhansk regions during like 11 years of war. And that is with tremendous human resources that they use. They've lost already 1 million, and now, according to Syrskyi, on the front lines, both in Ukraine and Russia, they have 695,000 soldiers. Just think about the number. And the fact that they also have 121,000 soldiers in reserve only proves that Putin does not want peace and he is prepared for a prolonged war. Witnessing this chaos, indecisiveness, weakness, escalation management, coalition of the observing, unpredictability of Donald Trump, he plans to play long, expecting that Russia, a country that outnumbers us in human resources, outnumbers us in this attitude towards suffering and misery, that they can exhaust Ukraine and the West. Well, I think this plan will fail just as a blitzkrieg, but we need your support. And subscribe to support Ukraine to demonstrate your solidarity. And I am honored to introduce you to a fundraiser of United 24. You know, that is an amazing digital platform of Ukraine. And right now we are collecting for what I love, catchers in the skies, or Shahed catchers. These are Ukraine-made, Ukraine-developed drone interceptors, specific turrets that are capable of precise strike and destruction of Russian Shahed drones. Those of you who follow the news from Ukraine might have noticed that since the beginning of the so-called totally fake negotiations process, the number of Russian drone attacks on Ukrainian civilian infrastructure grew tremendously. And that is the strategy of Putin. He knows he cannot conquer Ukraine, so he wants to spread fear, tragedies among people, and to push us to surrender. Of course, this will fail, but if we will have more of such catchers in the sky, and here I provide a link with detailed information about the fundraiser and the technology itself to United 24, so the more people will be saved. And I think that's the best mission one can have in life. So please support if you want to take part in this war against the evil. Plus, it is a technology that saves lives and does not hurt anyone. It only catches and neutralizes Russian Shahed drones and actually Russian Iranian Shahed drones. So another important thing is that in general, Ukraine is pretty good with the destruction and interception of the Russian Shahed drones. And for example, 82% of them, according to the official military statistics, are neutralized by Ukrainian air defense. 82%, that is really great, but I wish that was 100. And remember that Russia practices these combined attacks to, distort Ukrainian air defense, to exhaust people and other things. But we are working on the army of drones. We are constantly developing their technologies, how they can be used. But fiber optics is some area where we still lagging behind a little bit. And with Ukraine's precision strikes deep inside Russia, starting from this year only, we destroyed their various military facilities that cost Russia $10 billion, taking into account that their economy is suffering greatly. So this is really good news, minus $10 billion. And these billions of dollars, these are not just money, this is the destroyed instruments of war still inside Russia. I think it is super unjust that the White House imposes restrictions on the Ukrainian army and asks us not to hit Russian oil refineries. Well, there are rumors that once again we have this instruction from Washington. And when you look at the objects that we keep neutralizing now, you can clearly see no oil refineries. But one good object neutralized these days in the temporarily occupied part of Zaporizhia region, that was a locomotive, a cargo train, and we neutralized 11 tanks of oil that they wanted to deliver to the front lines. Perhaps Kerch Bridge, Crimean Bridge is not working and they need to use this railway that is very vulnerable, and we keep neutralizing the ammunition, the weapons, the fuel that they want to bring to the front lines, thus paralyzing the invaders and neutralizing them. But many of you react and tell me that you can do whatever you want, you don't have to follow Donald Trump's orders not to strike Russian oil refineries because you're doing that with your drones. Yes, guys, but unfortunately, we're still dependent on intelligence sharing, for example, or Starlink. And I am 100% sure that they use it to blackmail Ukrainian army and to ask us to create the maximum comfortable conditions for the Russians to keep targeting us. This is extremely unjust. This is very wrong, and that is an example of double standards that I personally hate in my life and in political and military life too, of course. And that is why I am happy to know that Ukraine develops our own ballistic missiles, and General Syrskyi confirmed that they were even already tested on the front lines. I know that everyone in Ukraine understands we need to become more and more independent. We need to develop our intelligence, our military production. I'm very grateful to those nations that support and understand the need, that realize the threats that Russia imposes on the global security, and those who launch various productions, developments, researches together with us. There are more and more people. And I think that the time will come when NATO will want to join Ukraine, and my arguments I provide in the new video on the channel Anna Danilchuk, with weekly updates about my thoughts and emotions during the times of the big war. So hopefully with each month, with each year, Ukraine will become stronger and more militarized, contrary to what Putin planned when began his totally failed blitzkrieg. Let me know in the comments below, do you think that the American strikes on Iran nuclear facilities actually sped up the global war? There are so many videos mocking that ambush in the White House, in the Oval Office with President Zelensky, when Trump was saying that Zelensky is gambling with World War III. So one story that I loved actually had two Trumps talking to each other and saying the exact same phrase. Anyway, I hope you feel that with Ukraine, that right now it maybe is the only country that follows the rules of war. So with Ukraine's, I don't know, I don't want to say survival, but with Ukraine's development, with Ukraine's presence on this political map, you feel safer. Because I feel safer understanding that there are some adults in the world, and Ukrainians are definitely adults here. Remember to subscribe and share to demonstrate your solidarity with Ukraine, and also follow me on X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and join the Discord community. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my sponsors and patrons of the channel. That is an honor and gives me more opportunities to film and write, and I'm forever grateful for that. Also check the merch shop, the link is in the description, for lots of good items that work well as reminders and conversation starters about Ukraine, and we need that, especially as the focus of people shifts from one war to another, forgetting a very important truth, universal truth: unpunished evil grows. And Russia here is the center of troubles. Neutralizing Russia, this axis will fall apart really quickly. Iran, North Korea, and China will return back to trade. So please share these messages if you share my opinion. And thank you so much for standing with Ukraine. That is very important for me personally and for everyone in my country. Slava Ukraini!